This story is read by the wonderful Mary Claire Wood.
A Breath of Fresh Air by Jennifer Tegg. John had tried to understand Pam's fears about the virus when news of it spreading abroad started coming through. He just felt she was overreacting, as usual. "John, have you washed your hands?" she said, as he came inside from emptying the bin. "John, where's your hand sanitizer?" And he'd just taken a letter from the postman. He answered her constant questions with a weary resignation he had forged over their 40-year marriage. "Don't worry so much, it'll be fine. I'm following the rules." She's always been a worrier. They didn't even go abroad for their honeymoon. "What if I fall ill, John? It'll ruin it," she pleaded. In the end, they'd made do with a rainy fortnight in Wales, because Pam thought it would be safer there for her. They'd stayed in a small hotel, in a cramped room, and John had sneaked out early every morning to walk in the nearby countryside, to get air in his lungs, to breathe, to feel free. Then, one morning as he returned from one of his illicit walks, he found Pam on the bathroom floor, crying. That was the day she turned from being a worrier into someone whose life was clouded with fear and panic. John always felt that it was his fault, what happened. His fault for leaving her and for not getting her to the hospital sooner. He had never had the courage to ask Pam if she thought it too. Over the years, John tried in his clumsy way to lift Pam out of her sadness. He brought home holiday brochures to exotic destinations and left them on the coffee table in hope Pam might be interested. He'd find them in the bin the next morning under the remains of last night's dinner. Finally, he gave up. There was nothing he could do to make her happy again. John loved his part-time job delivering groceries and told Pam repeatedly that it would still be safe for him to work, that he was helping the community, that he wouldn't take any risks. He felt needed now more than ever, and what's more, he got to talk to people. Light and friendly small talk with his regulars, rather than the stilted conversations he had had with Pam, skirting around the things they really wanted to say. The job was tolerated, until the quarantine gave her a good excuse to put the boot in. "Please, John, please stop that job. You don't know what you could catch from people. We don't need the money. How can you put our life in danger?" She cried until he thought she might give herself a stroke. He was actually relieved when he was furloughed and had to stop working anyway. It might help Pam calm down a little bit. As the virus retreated, the world outside began to breathe again as the lockdown eased, but not within the walls of John and Pam's house. Life inside remained silent, stagnant, airless. Pam insisted that the curtains remain drawn. Dust motes danced in small shafts of sunlight that peeked through as a glorious summer unfolded outside. "If folks think we're in, they might come knocking," she'd shouted when John suggested opening them. "It's not safe to let anyone in. It never will be." John wondered who on earth would want to come to this house anyway. He felt stifled, his small life disappointing. He'd resented Pam. He resented himself too, for what he'd allowed himself to become. As another day indoors passed by, John looked out of their bedroom window, across to the empty fields he loved to walk over. Walking was always his solace, all of his married life, even if lately Pam had forced him to wear a suffocating mask, which he took off as soon as he was no longer visible from their front window. Of course, his walks had stopped weeks ago. "What if someone bumps into you?" she'd shouted after him as he sneaked out of the door to go to the corner shop. He paced around the house, looking for jobs to do, leaving Pam to watch the news on television. The day outside looked so inviting. He longed to be out there, to get some air. He saw an elderly couple below the window walking along the pavement, hand in hand, smiling at each other, glad to be outdoors, enjoying the weather for once in a while after being cooped up for so long. Why can't I and Pam be like that? He thought, a question he'd often asked himself, He'd never been brave enough to admit that he already knew the answer. He thought of all the holidays he'd missed out on, the days he had to spend indoors, all to keep Pam happy, all to stop her worrying. It had long ago faded into the background of his own life, and now, looking at the world outside slowly starting to come to life again, he wanted so badly to be front and center of it, living in glorious colour, not in shades of sad grey. He picked his way down the stairs, past the boxes of antiseptic wipes and tinned goods Pam had pleaded with him to buy and that had sat there for months. "I'm more likely to break my bloody neck tripping on this lot than catching anything out there," he whispered to himself. He shouted down the hallway, "I'm just going for a quick walk, a breath of fresh air." In a flash, Pam was there, pulling at his arm so he dropped the front door key. "Don't! It's not safe! I won't let you! Pamela!" he shouted, before checking himself. "Pam, look. I've got to leave the house sometime. It's only for a walk." Giving a weak laugh, he waved his mask. "I've got this. It'll be careful. It's only half an hour." "I won't let you go, John. What if the virus is still about?" "What if it is?" he snapped. Pam for once was speechless. "If it is, it is. I need some air, Pam, and I'm going for a walk whether you like it or not." Stooping stiffly and picking the key up, John opened the door to the bright blue day that lay beyond. Pam remained on the stairs, hunched over, as if she was trying to fold in on herself and disappear. "Please don't leave me, John," she sobbed. Her hands tugged at her hair. "I'm so scared. Please don't leave me." John stopped in the doorway, as if he had heard her crying for the very first time. They were the same words she had said the first time she'd sat crying like this, in the hospital ward in Wales during their honeymoon, when the bright little life created inside her had been cruelly taken away. He hadn't known how to help her deal with the pain. He hadn't known how to deal with his own, so he'd left her to go for a walk, to get a breath of fresh air, left her sitting, crying alone. His cheeks stung with shame as he was forced to realize it wasn't just him missing out on life, but Pam too. He'd spent so long wishing Pam was braver when he needed to be braver and face the pain of the past. John turned back into the house and sat with Pam on the stairs, smoothing her hair, awkwardly putting his arm around her as she sobbed. "I'm sorry, Pam. It was my fault. I know it was. I shouldn't have left you. I'll look after you now. It's going to be all right. I promise." The light through the doorway was fading to sunset when John finally stood up again. He held Pam's hand and gently pulled her to her feet. He knew now how he could help her, how they might be able to start their lives again together. He asked the question he should have asked 40 years ago. "Would you come for a walk with me, Pam? Get some fresh air. We could talk about things, away from this house. It's lovely out there, and safe. You'll see."